Okay, so ready to really get into what's moving the markets today? We're doing a deep dive into your EQAI morning briefing, and let me tell you, there is some interesting stuff in here.
Yeah, there really is. It's actually fascinating how everything seems to connect. We're
Yeah.
seeing shifts in how people feel about housing. Crypto's making some unexpected moves.
Hmm.
And then there's that whole October surprise thing looming.
Right. First up, we got to talk about this Fannie Mae report. Housing sentiment being at a 2-year high. Seriously, people actually think mortgage rates are going down, even with home prices still climbing.
It's wild, isn't it? I think what we're seeing here is that market psychology at work. People feel optimistic, so they act on it. And that could actually end up fueling even more activity in the housing market.
Hmm.
But of course, it all depends on what interest rates actually do. Sentiment only gets you so far when it has to face reality.
Totally. We'll see how that plays out. But speaking of unexpected, did you see this thing on crypto? Conservative young millionaires are holding more of it than the big risk takers. Who would have guessed?
Right. I think it shows how the perception of digital assets is changing. It's not just about speculation anymore. It's becoming part of a diversified portfolio,
Yeah.
even for folks who are usually more cautious. Really interesting to see that shift.
It really is. Okay, switching gears for a sec, let's talk tech. Apple's stock took a hit. Seems like Wall Street's AI hype might be cooling off a little.
Yeah, well, AI integration it's complicated, and frankly, it's still early days. I think
Yeah.
this downgrade is a good reminder to keep expectations realistic. Not every innovation is going to be a smash hit right out of the gate.
Good point. But hey, it's not all bad news in innovation land. Remember Scholar Rock, the biotech company? Their stock shot up like 200% after their spinal muscular atrophy treatment had a successful trial. That's amazing.
Absolutely. That's what happens when you have a genuine medical breakthrough. The market takes notice. Big win for patients, and of course for investors too. Proof that progress and profit can go together.
Love to hear that. And speaking of big moves, Chevron Canada selling off its assets for, get this, $6.5 billion. That's going to shake things up a bit, don't you think?
For sure. This deal could really reshape the Canadian energy landscape. I think the key here is to watch who benefits from this and what it means for energy prices, not just in Canada, but globally. It'll have ripple effects.
Definitely something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, a lot going on, but important not to overreact. October is always a bit volatile. Remember, we also had that good jobs report recently, so it's not all doom and gloom.
True,
So
true. So, big picture, what should we be taking away from all this?
I think it's all about perspective. Instead of freaking out over every little thing, focus on the fundamentals and, think long term. All that crash talk is just noise.
Easier said than done sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get it. Speaking of things that might make us freak out, the briefing mentioned this whole October surprise idea. What is that exactly, and should we be worried?
Right, the October surprise. Basically, it's any big news that could, mess with an election.
Yep.
And it usually drops, well, in October, right before people vote.
So, like a political bombshell that could send the markets into a tailspin.
Pretty much. This year, the rumor mill is in overdrive. Everything from surprise economic data to
Yeah.
major policy announcements to international incidents, you name it, someone's worried about it.
Okay, wow. So how do we navigate this minefield, as investors?
First rule, don't panic. These things are almost impossible to predict, and trying to time the market based on rumors is a recipe for disaster.
So we just sit on our hands and hope for the best.
Not exactly.
Yeah.
Instead of reacting to every headline, focus on what you can control. Make sure your portfolio is diversified. Revisit your investment strategy, the basics. If you're really unsure, talk to a financial advisor.
Okay, good advice. Don't panic, be prepared, and maybe phone a friend.
Exactly. Now let's shift gears again. We've talked economics, we've talked geopolitics, but there's another layer to all this: cybersecurity. Your briefing mentioned rising concerns about cyber attacks, and with good reason.
Yeah, it seems like every other day there's a new data breach or ransomware attack. It's a little unnerving, to say the least.
It is, and it really highlights how interconnected everything is these days. We rely on digital systems for everything, from buying groceries to keeping the lights on. Any disruption to those systems can have massive ripple effects.
So how does this translate to the markets? What should we be watching for?
Well, keep an eye on companies in tech, finance, energy, especially those involved in critical infrastructure. They're prime targets. If a company gets hit with a major attack, it can tank their stock price, their reputation, the whole 9 yards.
Makes you think twice about those too good to be true deals you see online.
Right. And it goes beyond individual companies. There's also growing concern about state-sponsored attacks, targeting financial markets, or, even things like power grids.
Okay, now that's straight out of a spy movie.
I know, right? But the threat is real. Remember that attack on the pipeline last year? Disrupted fuel supplies for days. Imagine something like that happening to a bank or the power grid.
Okay, I'm officially nervous now, so what can we do about it? Asking for myself and, everyone listening.
It's a good question. On a personal level, strong passwords, watch out for phishing scams, keep your software updated, that kind of thing.
Right, good reminders. But what about as investors?
Well, awareness is key. When you're researching companies, look into their cybersecurity track record. Have they been targeted before? How'd they handle it? Do they take it seriously? You can even invest in companies specializing in cybersecurity solutions. That's a growing field.
So due diligence is more important than ever? Can't just look at the financials. Got to factor in the digital defenses, too. This is really making me think about where my money's going.
Good. It's not just an IT issue anymore. It's a business issue, a national security issue, and, yeah, a big investor issue.
You've given me a lot to think about. I'm sure our listener feels the same. So to bring it back to today's market movers, sounds like there's a lot of interconnected stuff happening. We've got potential economic surprises, geopolitical instability, cyber attacks looming. How do we even wrap our heads around all of this?
It's a lot, for sure. But even with all the uncertainty, there are still opportunities out there.
Right. So where do we go from here?
Stay informed, stay vigilant, and remember, knowledge is power.
Love that. Curiosity as an investment strategy. Okay, speaking of knowledge, let's dive back into that EQAI morning briefing. I'm super curious about something else you highlighted. The connection between energy prices, climate change, and what it all means for, everyday people like us.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. And it's only going to get bigger.
Well, don't leave me hanging. Break it down for us.
Yeah.
Break it down for us. What's the connection between energy prices, climate change, and us regular folks?
Okay, so those rising oil prices, just one piece of a much bigger picture.
Sure.
We've got climate change causing all these crazy weather events, right?
Right.
Hurricanes, wildfires.
Right.
And that messes with energy production. Hurricanes in the Gulf, bye-bye oil rigs. Wildfires, new pipelines. Shutdowns, delays. And what happens? Prices go up, up, up.
Wow, I never really thought about it like that. So it's like a double whammy. The weather messes up the energy, and then we all end up paying more.
Exactly. And it goes way beyond just gas prices, utility bills, groceries. Everything gets more expensive. We're all feeling it.
Depressing but true. So what do we do? Besides, investing in a bunker and a year's supply of canned goods.
Well, we can all try to use less energy, right? Small steps. But the real solutions, the big ones, those involve switching to cleaner energy.
You're talking wind, solar, that kind of stuff.
Exactly. And this is where it gets interesting for investors. Because as the world transitions to renewable energy, that's where the opportunities are. Solar panel companies, wind turbine manufacturers, electric vehicle makers.
So you're saying we can, align our investments with our values and potentially make money off of it?
That's the idea. Impact investing, it's called. And it's a growing trend. Investors are realizing they can put their money towards something good and still see those returns.
Okay, that's actually pretty cool. I got to be honest. My brain is kind of full after all this. We've gone from housing to crypto to cyber attacks to the fate of the planet. What's the one big takeaway you want our listeners to remember from this deep dive? It's all connected. Literally everything we talked about. The market ups and downs, the global stuff happening, the new medical discoveries, the future of energy. It's all part of this big, complex, constantly changing world. And if you want to navigate it, especially as an investor, stay curious, stay informed, and never stop asking questions.
I love that. Curiosity is an investment strategy.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for taking this deep dive with me and with our listeners today. As always, I've learned a ton.
My pleasure.
And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into your EQI Morning Briefing. We'll be back soon with another personalized briefing to help you stay ahead of the curve. Until then, happy investing.